Hello and welcome to Procrastination Points video with Snark. I'm making my way through Fallen by Lauren Kate. If you haven't seen the other videos, you might want to do that before jumping into this one, or else you might be confused. Links will be posted below. Chapter 18. Luce takes off running into the cemetery. She didn't care that the sharp, twisting limbs of the live oak tree scratched her arms and face as she ran, or that clumps of thick-rooted weeds tripped up her feet. She had to get down there. The waning sliver of moon offered little light, but there was another source, coming from the bottom of the cemetery. Exactly how deep is this basin? Because earlier I just kind of assumed that there was a faint but notable slant inwards, but all the drama of the non-existent climax of the book is acting like she's running down into a canyon. As Luce goes, she thinks about how she feels like the shadows have been trying to warn her for days now, and now whatever evil thing has been lurking is now so tangible that even Penn can see the shadows, and whatever nonsense is going on, it drew unrelated students closer. Luce hurries on, driven by the urgent need to see Daniel. She worries about not getting to him on time. I, however, am not overly worried, mainly because we're 18 chapters into a 20-chapter book, and nothing up until this point has made me care about any of this. Furthermore, there are a couple of other books after this, and it'll probably be about whatever stupid non-issue relationship struggles the author can think of to throw at Luce and Daniel next. As Luce continues to run, Penn cries out for her. Miss Sophia is following after Penn. Luce tells both of them that it's not safe. They look up and see something described as dark pockets. They think that it's a swarm of locusts. Miss Sophia screams out that there needs to be order to the world. Luce again tells Penn that she needs to go back to the dorm. Luce continues on and eventually finds Daniel. And despite the fact that this chapter has been moving towards an urgent end, we have to reestablish that yes, Daniel is still hot. Daniel is surprised to see her. He holds her and Luce asks how he can love her. He asks how she knows that he's an angel. She explains about her dreams of him, about how she feels when she's around him, and a bunch of little things too. Daniel says that they've never gotten this far before and asks her to repeat what he is. And it's like, hello, the apocalypse is sort of kicking off right above your heads now. Can you maybe stop making kissy faces at each other for 5 seconds? As the wind howls around them, Luce says that she has to do something to stop all of whatever is happening. Luce tells her that none of this is her fault. He says that he should have known something was up when she told him about how she can see the shadows. He says that they can't hurt anybody and that they're called announcers. They go to observe and then report back, but the big shadows that even Penn can see are the warriors that the announcers summoned for a war. But Daniel seems to think that they still have time. Miss Sophia and Penn then make their presence known. Daniel is only embarrassed that Luce found the book he wrote and says that he shouldn't have written it. Luce then asks Daniel why he can't tell her about any of this. He says that if he does at the wrong time, then Luce could disappear again. However, Miss Sophia continues to be whatever immortal enigma that she is and warns that Daniel is going to get Luce killed. Again. I don't want any more secrets. I love him. Ugh. You know it's all over for you when you start to agree with the adults in a young adult novel. Luce has enough of the facts at this point to make an informed decision, but she opts to have sexy makeout at times with a hot guy over literally her own life. And then Cam shows up, because you knew he would. And I know that this goes more beyond anything that we've read so far, but at the same time, all of this honestly seems like Cam throwing a hissy fit like a toddler because he got dumped. And blah blah blah. Cam controls those warrior shadows. He gloats over Daniel. Miss Sophia apparently goes into some sort of trance and starts to dance around. Daniel seems to understand what Miss Sophia is saying, although Luce can't. And then Ariane and Gabby show up, because of course they do. The only one missing is Molly, I guess. Gabby says that something is different about Luce, that the cycle might be broken. And finally, Luce asks what in the world is going on. Ariane tells her that if they win, it'll be hell on earth. And I'm pretty sure that we all know she means quite literally, but the rewards for their side winning are unclear. Some angels show up and Daniel again tells Luce to go. Miss Sophia promises that she knows somewhere safe to keep Luce. Luce continues to argue since she's apparently that kind of stupid, but she eventually follows Miss Sophia with Penn. They run along and Penn faints a little. As Luce puts her on the ground, she sees an immense wound on Penn's shoulder. And then Luce looks back at the cemetery, which is what Daniel told her not to do, and she sees fire and lights and all sorts of horrifying things of literal biblical proportions. Miss Sophia lifts Pen up and carries her like it's nothing inside the church. Luce tries to ask what Miss Sophia is, but Miss Sophia is more interested in getting the girls inside to safety. However, Luce seems to think that sheltering in place is not wise, especially since Pen is so badly hurt. Luce wants to get her friend to a hospital, but Miss Sophia says that Pen is only slowing them down. She then kills Pen, which, yeah, the only thing that I actually did care about in this series, and she just had her throat slit by an uncaring monster. Chapter 19. Miss Sophia forces Luce at knife point upstairs to a space she previously said wasn't part of the gym just yet. Luce is at war with herself over this because Daniel had told Luce to trust Miss Sophia, but Luce also just saw Miss Sophia murder Pen, so like... The room that they're in has an altar in it, which Luce describes about as big as she is, which... Danger, Will Robinson! And then Miss Sophia starts to secure Luce to it, because of course this is where this is headed. Miss Sophia says that she just wants Daniel and starts yammering about lovesick teenagers and tipping the scales of fate. Luce reminds Miss Sophia that when she dies, she'll just come back again. But Miss Sophia laughs and says that she won't this time. She explains that Luce herself gave the answer earlier, that her parents weren't religious and never had her baptized, but all the other Lucindas throughout history were baptized. So you're telling me that the difference between reincarnation and your soul dying is a Christian-style bath? I'm just gonna go with it. Miss Sophia continues to prattle on for a while and basically gloats about the entire thing. She also kind of... what's the female version of mansplaining? She explains death to Luce because I guess she assumes that Luce is too stupid to understand what happens when somebody murders you. But as Miss Sophia places the knife on Luce's chest, Daniel bursts in through the stained glass to rescue her. Obviously. He shines an insanely bright light over everything and unfurls his wings, and while they make goo-goo eyes at one another, Miss Sophia is... who knows what she's doing. The book doesn't care, and as such, I can't make myself care either. Gabby and Ariane show up also with their wings out. Luce wonders if the war is over or not since they're in there and not fighting. They say some stuff about needing to hunt down Miss Sophia and how they thought that they could trust her. They explain to Luce that Miss Sophia is something called an elder from a sect of... You know what? I'm just going to throw this word up onto the screen and not even pretend to know how to pronounce this. That little sect is usually not noticed, but they say that after Miss Sophia's actions, that's going to get the entire group a lot of attention, and that Miss Sophia will now be expelled, and we'll be seeing a lot more of Cam and Molly from here on out. Oh, and they're all fallen angels, Daniel, Cam, everybody, but the only difference is that there are sides, and obviously one is evil and the other is a pure cinnamon roll, except for Pen. Pen was a mortal girl who got caught up in this nonsense and had to pay the price with her life. Pen was the actual cinnamon roll and pretty much the best part of this book. Daniel explains that there's no winning a war like this, that it is near impossible for an angel to kill another angel, so they usually just beat each other up and then call it a night. Luce then realizes that there's blood on Daniel's arm. He says that it's Pen's and that he saw her downstairs. Luce wants to bury Pen next to her father, but the girls say that it's time to go. They eventually reline a little because they know that Luce is going to keep complaining about it the entire time. Daniel says that it's not safe for Luce, and even more now that her status as a true mortal is going to be getting out. He warns that others will likely follow in Miss Sophia's footsteps. Luce asks what's going to happen next, but Daniel says that it would draw too much attention if they just left the school. Instead, he sends the girls to go get some unknown male human. Chapter 20. Dawn. The break of the last day, Luce would see it sword and cross for, well, she didn't know how long. So I'm kind of wondering how the rest of the school is going to react to what just happened. I'm going off the assumption that they're all regular mortal humans and not like demons or elves or whatever. Also, so Luce is going to disappear, right? Like, what about her parents? The school is just going to ring up Mr. and Mrs. Price and have to explain to them that Luce disappeared after the apocalypse apparently happened and another student disappeared. The police will probably be called in, an investigation opened. But who cares about that, because Luce gets to have her sexy makeouts with Daniel. Ugh. So the angels leave the church, folding up their wings as they do. They take Pen's body up to where Luce had been about to be murdered, for now, if only because Daniel warned that the cemetery would be teeming with people. They go outside and see that this is true. Randy is trying to get in touch with the headmaster. The police are there. Daniel warns about what Luce is going to see down there. He says that it's not gory, but just different. They go down to the cemetery where they see all of the trees were all but destroyed by the locusts. There's also this black dust that settled over everything. Daniel explains that it's what happens when angels fight each other. It doesn't really do anything except to baffle the humans. He laughs and tells her about some guy out in California who is convinced that it comes from UFOs. Luz shows Daniel where Pen's father is buried. Luz feels sad about the entire thing, but even more so that she can't give Pen a proper memorial. Daniel tries to tell her that Pen will be with her always. They run off when some police come closer. They go to the lake where Daniel says a lot of cryptic things about the rock in the middle of it leading to where they need to go next. And it sounds like Daniel is going to be going now too. He says that Mr. Cole will call her parents and that he's on our side, which answers one of my questions at least, but I'm still kind of curious as to what he'd say to them. They swim out to the rock where Daniel goes on and says that it'll be the last time that they can be alone for a while. He gives her a locket that Luz had seen him wearing and says that it used to belong to her. Inside is an old picture of the two of them, but he refuses to tell her more now. Luz tries to tell him about Cam and the snake necklace. Daniel reassures her that the things that happened with Cam weren't her fault at all. He says that it's likely that she'll have more encounters with Cam and others like him in the future. Daniel says that he has to go deal with Cam, but he'll come back to her once it's all over. They swim back to shore where they meet up with Mr. Cole as well as Ariane and Gabby. The girls give Luz some things and say their goodbyes. Mr. Cole says that he'll be waiting for Luz in the cockpit of a plane which is parked not too far away. Daniel says that Luz is in Mr. Cole's hands now. Luz finally goes into the plane where Mr. Cole reassures her that he was with the Air Force and fought in Vietnam. After taking off, Luz asks if it would be possible for her to talk with her parents ever. He promises that they'll figure something out. And there's an epilogue, which I seem to have completely forgotten about, but I'm determined to finish this stupid book today, so I guess that I'm going to dive into it now. Epilogue. Daniel watches as Luz sleeps. He's there, but he can't let her know that he's there, so she slumbers on. Cam shows up and Daniel goes through pomp and circumstance to let him in through a window. Cam wants Luz, and just so that we're clear on this, he means romantically. He says that he would have killed Miss Sophia for what she tried to do to Luz and not just let her go, like Daniel did. They talk briefly about a truce before they shake on it. And then that's the end of that. Much like the rest of this book, this epilogue was nothing but padding and completely unnecessary, but with the added bonus of getting people pumped from the next book in this series. So yeah, that was Fallen by Laura and Kate. Overall, this book was kind of like how Born at Midnight and Stalking Jack went. It never really seemed to be building up to anything, and then it was like Kate suddenly remembered that stories need to have a big climax, so she shoved in something at the very end even though there was zero build up to it. And I'm not going to say that there wasn't any foreshadowing to what Daniel was, and there was some about Cam too. But my main problem is that Miss Sophia's betrayal kind of came out of nowhere. There were no hints or build up to the fact that she was anything but a librarian. Literally all of her knowledge of things like the Bible and Dante's Inferno could be brushed into the category of her being a librarian. I am a little curious to find out where this is going to go, but at the same time, as I slog through the rest of the Stalking Jack series, let's just say that I've learned how to keep my expectations low. As always, I plan on doing the rest of this series on my Patreon, but it's going to take a while before I can even get around to it again. As of right now, the last week of November 2020, I've just started reading Lolita. On deck for my Patreon list is the last of the Stalking Jack books, Capturing the Devil, the third book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series, Court of Wings and Ruin. The first two books were miserable and tedious to read, so super looking forward to that. After that, I'm finally going to dive into the rest of the Born at Midnight series, and I have plans to read 1984 since I've never read it and it just seems relevant right now. And since I do love my lists, I might as well tell you what's on deck for Tumblr. I'm currently most of the way through the 9th Hollows book. There are 13 in the series, and every single one of them somehow manages to get worse than the last. I have 3 more books in the Blending series. I'm expecting a lot more of the same constant repetition from that. After I finish the Blending series, I'm going to start reading the Dark Swan series by Rochelle Mead, of which there are 4 books. I think that she wrote the Vampire Academy series, which I actually sort of enjoyed, so that shouldn't be too bad, but we'll see. And finally, All for the Game series. And I have no idea what that's about, so my expectations are honestly kind of neutral about it. And now you're probably mentally begging me just to get to the point and to announce what book that I'm going to be doing for YouTube next, so I won't keep you in suspense any longer. The Betrothed by Kier Cass. It was kind of a spur-of-the-moment decision to do it, but mainly because while there are other books in the series, they haven't been published just yet. It's perfect and it'll allow me a tiny bit of breathing room to work through my Patreon queue a bit more. However, I'm going to be taking a week off before I jump into that. Thanks for listening to my Book Snark on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and be here in 2 weeks for the start of The Betrothed. Don't forget to check out my other Video Snark series. And I've already told you what you can look forward to seeing on both Patreon and Tumblr, so be sure to check both of those out. As a reminder, Patreon supporters get shoutouts in my videos. Thank you so much to Don and Phoebe for supporting me already. You can hear your name next week by joining my Patreon for $1 a month. However, since it is a recurring charge, I also accept PayPal and Ko-fi. Also, if you want to read some of the stuff that I've published, then you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have 17 erotic short stories, 1 short story collection, and 1 full-length novel. Links for everything will be posted below. See you in 2 weeks, guys!